Welcome to the ArtMiabo Podcast, the show where we talk to fine artists, creative minds, and cultural backers from the African continent and now beyond. I'm your host, Gifton Yadike, and if you enjoy these kinds of conversations, please leave a like and a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a multidisciplinary artist with a background in mathematics, engineering, and business. Central to his artistic philosophy is the idea of asking questions like, how do we unpaint, undraw, unbuild as a way of discovering new forms of expression? Mr. Rolin Pettway Jr., thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So, I set the table for the audience, but could you please, in a bit more detail, introduce yourself for those who may be unfamiliar with?
Okay. Well, first, thank you for your beautiful intro. I appreciate you and your time and the support of the ArtMiabo brand universe. I don't take it lightly, the ability to come and, share with you and your audience. So I just wanted to let you know, first of all, that I appreciate you. And this is a great gift being here this morning.
Well,
My
thank
name
you.
is,
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My name is Rolin Pettway Jr., and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, USA, and now I'm currently living and working in Atlanta, Georgia, USA, with my family. I'm celebrating 10 happy years of marriage this past Thursday. And
Congratulations.
my wife and I, thank you. My wife and I have two wonderful sons, one 7 and one 3. But as far as my work goes, my art practice, the work that I'm producing exists at the intersection of Black popular culture and spirituality, informed by my Christian faith. So I'm really interested, with the work that I'm doing, I'm really interested in how art has the ability to convey information, how it facilitates conversation, and how it, connects people and really can build community. Much of the work that I'm doing, I'm, fully multidisciplinary. So I'm working on both 2D and 3D with a collection of objects, doing drawing, painting, collage, bricolage, ready-mades, found objects, sculptures. But with all of these things, I'm really interested in like thresholds. So like particularly with 2D works, like what's the threshold of recognizability? So how little of information can I give a viewer for them to still be able to register what I'm trying to portray? From a 3D object perspective, I'm even questioning like utility of the objects themselves. So like, from a 3D perspective, I can build you a sculpture or just an item that has a specific use, like a chair or a table, but then I can slide that slider down to a more abstract form of a thing where it could cause a person to ponder, what is this object even? And then from that perspective, I'm really trying to understand, okay, what is the use of an object beyond its obvious use? And can some objects have an inherent use to them, whether it be emotionally, spiritually, or intellectually, or just to trigger thought and broader conversation? So generally, that's the type of work that I'm doing.
Thank you very much for that. And could you actually tell us a bit more about your journey as an artist? What is it that put you on this path?
I would say that my journey has been exciting, but also not typical. I would say that like the beginnings of my creative journey started early as an undergrad. I studied mathematics, and I was really interested in music production at the same time. So I was like just curating a lot of music, and early on, studying how to produce music alongside going to school studying math. After about 3 years of undergrad, pivoted to electrical engineering, where I was more applying the things that I was learning directly to my art practice. So at that point, about 3 years into undergrad, began to study electrical engineering. So I produced, recorded, and commercially released a compilation album of hip hop, R&B, and pop music. And this was done, all while being a student. And I was actually relying upon the help and resources of a lot of other fellow students at the time who were also recording artists. So I say that takes us to about, I'm dating myself, but that takes me to about 2007, finishing grad school. And then I, kind of took a 10-year journey, gestation, if you will, where I really was developing an artistic point of view. So I did a lot of corporate design work. So as part of that, just personally, I was studying fashion a lot. I did quite a bit of travel internationally. I'd done a lot of, museum research, just kind of having a wide funnel for all things cultural to, again, develop a beginning voice or a point of view. Over this time period of 10 years, between '07 and 17, I also earned an MBA. That also gave me different perspectives than I had had previously. Up until right at the cusp of like 2016, 2017, I left a career in corporate engineering and design, and pursued entrepreneurship full time. So I, been involved in a few different startups and worked with some other co-founders on a few different projects that have varying levels of success. But ultimately, when I founded Ultra Quality, which is a creative company and platform that I own now, it really was like a springboard into me supporting the business with my creative gifts and talents that I've been developing over the past 10 or 15 years at that point. So that puts us around 17. So about 17 to now, if I fast forward to now, I've really stepped away from a lot of the business, but am have more so been purely focused on artistic expression and developing my voice. That has really led me into a full-on multidisciplinary practice. And, since, establishing myself as a multidisciplinary artist, I've done a handful of solo exhibitions. I've done some group exhibitions, and I've established the foundation of a collector base, and that family continues to grow. Day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year.
Thank you so much for that. I spoke about it briefly in the intro, and I think you also spoke about it as well. But the thing that truly stood out to me when I was looking you up and looking through your work was the concept of the undrawing, unpainting, unbuilding, and so on. Could you explain that philosophy a bit more and what it means to you and how it first emerged in your practice?
Okay, so for me, the concept of the un is about deconstructing. I'd say two really important ideas that came around that was one, a pretty famous Picasso quote that it took him 4 years to paint like Raphael, but it took him his entire life to learn to paint like a child. This mapped in my mind to a teaching of Jesus in the Bible, Matthew 18:3, where he says, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we need to be as children are. So these are two like really strong examples that have led my artistic sensibility from the perspective of how do I tap into something that's childlike. So from that perspective, I've always been very observant of both my children and the way that they approach creativity, but also the children that are in my family or my children's friends or children at school. And I've noticed that there's a certain beauty and joy and intuition that children have around approaching creativity. So that's been something I've always wanted to understand and tap into in my own work. And even going back to the biblical example, I think in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, allowing us to be as children requires us to have that level of connection to the work. So the work that I'm doing, I'm making sure that I'm showing up in a state of allowing that allows me to take a childlike approach to the work, which became the underlying basis for unmastery. Even again, going back to the Picasso example, it's like if it took him his whole life to become the Picasso that everyone widely knows, then how can I short circuit formal mastery and go straight to where the actual mastery is? And that's kind of an embrace to a fully intuitional approach.
Thank you for that. I guess we can keep it. We can keep it with the Picasso example. Like you said, he spent his entire life learning to draw like a child, as he says, and you were attempting to emulate that as well. Many artists, Picasso spent a lifetime. Many artists spend just as long trying to or seeking perfection, trying to perfect their technique. What do you think that artists of all kinds, whatever their discipline may be, what do you think artists gain by unlearning certain habits?
I think they gain authenticity, quite honestly. That was a big thing for me. A big part of my journey as an artist came in parallel to me doing a lot of inner work. So for me, I built a real identity, coming out of school and going into the workforce and becoming a young adult. I built like an identity around being perfect or being a perfectionist. And, once you, live a little more life and have a little more experience, you realize that it's nothing further from the truth. Like no one is perfect, but yet we're inherently perfect based upon who we are and what we can be. So from that perspective, I was thinking about how do I embrace imperfections? So how do I, when I'm making something, rather than trying to make it, perfect and repeatable and make the line straight, how do I embrace and appreciate the uniqueness that my voice or my hand has when applied to something. And so from that perspective, I really started to invite the quote unquote mistakes in. And then I realized at that point that things were like, perfectly imperfect because I found that I was, building things that really highly resonated with people. And I was like, oh, I was just, doing something as it came to me. I wasn't trying to necessarily apply precision to it. So I think that that process, the process of departing from an idea was perfect and leaning into imperfections and quote unquote mistakes. This is what gets us to that place of authenticity.
Yes, I believe it was Bob Ross. I mean, I'm going a bit cliche here, but there are no mistakes, just happy accidents.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We started at the beginning talking about how you've worked across an extraordinary range of disciplines, visual art, music, engineering, mathematics, fashion, photography, and film. Do you see these as separate creative practices, or are they all different expressions of the same underlying ideas?
So I think at the surface, each of those things are, different disciplines that require different competencies. But I think when you go deep enough, you realize that they're all different facets of one underlying philosophy. So if I look at, each of these things, I'm really concerned, like as an artist, with how to develop like a overall ethos, such that my work has a through line and an invisible signature that's attached to it. And usually this happens like within one media, like you can tell Rolin painted that painting or Rolin took those pictures. But I'm even trying to broaden it such that like whether I'm going from photography to film to fashion to the building of a 3D object, that they all have that same through line. So I think that it's really important to develop a point of view, have a voice such that your work has a character that makes it recognizable no matter what you're working in.
For that. I think this also somewhat ties into my final question here. And that is, if somebody watching this conversation wanted to apply the idea of the into their own creative life, not necessarily as an artist, but just as somebody who wants to just think differently, who wants to, like you said, create your own voice, create your own signature that people can recognize, where would you encourage them to start?
I think you really have to begin within. For me, art continues to prove itself to be a inward journey just as much as it is an outward manifestation. So it's more to an artistic practice than imagining things in your mind and making them. That's a critical part of it, and it's really important. And it's really transformative. However, I think the precursor or either the parallel path becomes a, a deep amount of self-awareness and self-knowledge. I think the artists that highly resonate with their audiences, or especially the greats or the masters, the people that we've known for a long time, tap into something deep within themselves that is a reflective byproduct that's made evident in their work. I think that being able to answer the call and go deep within is a great initial step in starting that process.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rolin Pettway. If you enjoyed this conversation, please, of course, leave a like, share, and subscribe. Sir, I just, once again, congratulate you, first of all, on your anniversary, and I
Thank
wish you all the best in all your work going forward. And I honestly
you.
do hope that the concept of the I pray that this is something that a lot of people watching this can actually take and apply to their own work. They might have to think, how can I approach this differently? So thank you once again for that. I'm Gifton
Thank you.
Yadike. This is ArtMiabo. I will see you all next time.